Coming on the air with what can only be described as the Voldemort of the economy. The word nobody wants to say, but that everybody fears. Recession, driving the Nasdaq's worst day in nearly 3 years tonight. China and Canada clapping back with tariffs, and the president suggesting his long-term plan is worth some short-term pain. His message to people worried about egg prices and what it all means for your money. We're also live in Los Angeles, where the path to freedom for the Menendez brothers is narrowing. Why some family members say the new district attorney is holding them hostage. Then the frantic search for a 20-year-old spring breaker missing in the DR. The new clues we're just getting in tonight. Plus, why one of the biggest names in the WNBA is floating a strike if a new deal doesn't take the Caitlin Clark effect into account. And in tonight's original, with time running out for TikTok to find a new buyer, we are looking at the new suitors who say they want in, as long as China's willing to play ball. That's coming up a little bit later in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and in just the last hour, you've seen it, you've watched it, the markets are getting rocked, with one of the biggies now the lowest it's been in more than 2 years, as President Trump refuses to rule out the possibility of a recession or some short-term pain potentially for Americans in the weeks ahead. Here it is red, red, red across the board. And this last number is interesting, right? It's not just a 900-point drop just about for the Dow. It's the Nasdaq's worst day since 2022. But to hear President Trump tell it, don't stress about the markets or a possible recession, because what he's doing is so big. Watch.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition, because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time.
Okay, so if you're like, what's this all about? Why is this happening? Why is it going down today? Part of it is because of this tariff train that shows no sign of slowing down, at least not from this White House. Tomorrow, you've got new tariffs on Canadian lumber and dairy. And then Wednesday, more, 25% on steel and aluminum imports from everybody. All of it adds to the uncertainty in the economic picture. So questions like, how will those retaliatory tariffs that kick in 3 weeks from now, how will those factor in? What about some of the new leadership north of the border in Canada? And then there's that government shutdown that's looming on Friday. We've got more on that from Capitol Hill later. Vaughn Hilliard is joining us for the political impact. But I want to start with Brian Chung with what it means for your money. And Brian, you look at some of these numbers, and when you look at the practical impact of this, you've got new retaliatory tariffs, which I will never try to say live on television again, mostly on things from the grocery store, right? 15% on chicken, wheat, corn, cotton. What does all this mean for people's money? And why is it that the markets are having such frantic, candidly, like a tantrum today, right? I mean, you're seeing the numbers drop so significantly.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think that regardless of what the news headlines were today, because we saw a real roller coaster in action in the stock market today, it's really about the culmination of all these retaliatory tariff actions that are kind of teeing up this first stage of what could be an escalating tariff war that's just beginning. As you mentioned, there is those retaliatory actions from China when it comes to a lot of agricultural products in the United States. And I want to point out that that's more damaging to Chinese buyers and Chinese consumers, because we're talking about exports of things like pork and beef and soybeans from the United States to China. It's going to get more expensive in China to buy those things. But that's a really big deal for American farmers who, in some cases, rely on China so much for those exports. You look at soybeans on that chart ahead of you. They have a 10% tariff, which who knows if that gets ratcheted up by the Chinese government going forward. Soybeans account for more than, rather 50% of soybean exports from the United States are accounted for by China. It is the major buyer around the world of soybeans. If it gets more expensive, maybe they go somewhere else. That's going to be very damaging for American farmers.
I cannot help but notice, my dear friend, that you said the words retaliatory tariffs like 10 times in that discussion. So hats off to you, friend, for getting through that. Extremely impressive as always. Listen, talk us through why the markets are having such a freak out. We know that tends to link to uncertainty. When the markets don't know what's coming, that's when you see it. We also know that the markets are not the economy. How many times have we talked about that here on this show? So gut check, level set for us here. How concerned should people be about things like their 401ks?
Yeah, well, first off, for your 401k, don't look, because the idea is that you're supposed to be holding on to that for a while until retirement to then draw it out. So just looking right now is just going to tease you and just make you feel really depressed about something you shouldn't be looking at in the first place. But look, when it comes to just the overall story, I think what is interesting is that there are certainly times where the stock market is not the economy. But in this case, I think Main Street and Wall Street are kind of feeling the same way here.
So
they both want more clarity on the tariffs here. And when it comes to the slide that we've seen in the stock market, I want to point out the S&P 500 has been down like 7% since Donald Trump's first full day in office. A lot of that is coinciding with the escalation that we've seen in the tariff war. Investors, but so do regular people, want more certainty. They want to know what they're going to be paying at the store.
Let me play a little bit of the defense that we've heard from some of the cabinet members, two of the president's top advisors, the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, the National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett, who have been out over the last 24 hours. Now, I should note, prior to what we saw when the markets closed about 65 minutes ago, and I want to play for folks what they said.
Should Americans brace for a recession?
Absolutely not. There's going to be no recession in America.
I'd just be very wary, Joe, of conversations about recession or not, given that we had 2 negative quarters. That used to be a recession under Biden, and then that wasn't a recession.
To make a small point here, there is actually a definition of what a recession is, right, which is 2 quarters of negative growth. Is what these people close to the president saying, is it having any impact on confidence for investors here?
Well, clearly not, because they made those remarks earlier today, and the stock market closed for its worst day in 2025. So I think we'll have to see what the kind of conversation looks like going forward. But I think it's pretty binary. People want more clarity, and investors want more clarity on what's happening in the tariff policy. When they get more certainty on that, maybe that's when we see markets rebound. But again, no sign of reprieve, at least in the last week, Hallie.
Brian Chung, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let me bring in Vaughn Hilliard, who's live for us outside the White House. We talked about the tariff train, Vaughn, that is barreling ahead full steam, despite some of the numbers that we're seeing. Are you getting any sense from conversations that you and our team are having with sources that there is any kind of possible pivot or pause on tariffs coming up from President Trump anytime soon?
I think the one pivot we saw came last week when they rescinded some of the tariffs there on some goods between Mexico and Canada that were covered by the USMCA trade agreement. But as you said, dairy and lumber tariffs are being implemented here this week. And I think dairy, for one, is just an example. You know, we can look at all these different commodities and all these different goods that are produced in the U.S. and exported overseas. And I think dairy is actually kind of a good example, because you're looking at, comparatively to Canada, which has restrictions on how much dairy its farmers are able to produce. Compare that to the United States, where there is clearly an overproduction of milk. People are drinking less milk. And the U.S. has frustratingly had a difficult time finding new markets to sell its milk to. And that is where you see President Trump trying to use that as a wedge between Canada and the United States to try to force Canada's hand to buy more American milk. And that is the question. Does it actually ultimately result in beneficial means? Because if you go back to the USMCA trade agreement back from its first administration, which was the pact between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, dairy, for example, that was addressed. And Canada did agree to buy some more U.S. milk. And so that's where you're hearing some from Canadian officials frustrated. They felt like they did negotiate during the first Trump administration, and now he's using tariffs yet again to hold them to a T to make even greater exemptions moving forward.
And yet, while we haven't heard from the president on camera today, he has been posting things over the course of the last 48 hours or so online on Truth Social. He obviously did that interview that we played a little bit of on Fox Business just within the last 24 hours. But he reposted this Charlie Kirk article that says, "Shut up about egg prices. Trump is saving consumers millions." And yet, Vaughn, one of the things that Americans are talking about and thinking about, and we know it because this network and many others have reported on it, is this spike in egg prices, obviously related to the bird flu, but indicative of some of the pain that people are feeling in the immediate short term.
Right. And this was the backbone of the 2024 campaign for the Republican candidate, Donald Trump. And so now there is an adverse reaction to the economic decisions being made by this White House. And of course, egg prices are stemmed from the bird flu, but there is also concern about the commodities prices and sales on the export markets here. And that is where you see J.D. Vance, the vice president, he put out on a social media post just a few moments ago that, quote, "President Trump's economic policies are simple. If you invest in and create jobs in America, you'll be rewarded. We'll lower regulations and reduce taxes. But if you build outside of the United States, you're on your own." trying to force the hands of companies to move their productions here inside of the United States. The difficult part about this here, and as we heard from Howard Lutnick, his Commerce Secretary, Scott Bessent, his Treasury Secretary, and Kevin Hassick, his Chief Economics Advisor, two of whom you played sound bites from in the last 24 hours, they are struggling to deliver a message that is not disjointed as to exactly what the administration's objectives and end means and mission ultimately are in what is actually successful in terms of what they're looking for in terms of economic advances to roll back the tariffs that they're implementing right now. Those are answers that the president and his team have not answered.
Vaughn Hilliard, thank you very much for that live for us outside the White House. Let's take you down Pennsylvania Avenue to Capitol Hill. And stop me if you've heard this one before. The countdown is on. The clock is ticking. The cliches are deja vuing because, yes, we are watching once again to see if the government can keep itself up and running. This shutdown showdown comes with a bit of a new twist. It's really going to be a show of Republican unity if they can get there. And it could all come to a head as soon as tomorrow, because that's when the president and the Speaker of the House are calling a vote on a bill to keep the lights on until the end of September. That's what they want to see. Now, if they can't get it all done tomorrow, if they can't get it together by then, they're going to have a few days buffer until Friday at midnight. That's why you see March 14th there. That is when we will see, if they don't pass something, a shutdown that would furlough millions of federal workers. Republicans have a super close majority, right? So if all Democrats band together against this bill, the GOP could only afford to lose one vote. And already, one House Republican is saying he is a hard no. NBC's Julie Sirkin is following this one for us. You don't even have to say anything, Julie. Just give a thumbs up for avoiding a shutdown and a thumbs down if we're headed for a shutdown. What you got?
Like in the middle, I guess, and that is because we just heard literally a couple of moments ago from House Democratic leadership calling out this bill. You had a bit of what's in it on your screen because it pluses up a little bit in defense spending and it cuts non-defense discretionary spending. That's the bucket of money that Democrats are a hard no on, and we heard as much from House Democratic leaders who said they will not be voting for this bill. That is why House Speaker Johnson, why President Trump, who's been working the phones and inviting some of these rebel rousers to his White House last week, that's why they're working so hard to get all Republicans unified, or almost all, behind this bill, because then in turn it could put pressure on Democrats in the Senate, of which they need 7. Here's Speaker Johnson earlier today.
No one wants to shut the government down. If we are governing, doing the responsible thing as Republicans, it's going to be up to Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats to do the right thing. And I don't think they're going to shut the government down.
Now, it is a tall order to imagine that Democrats in the Senate, who represent entire states of people, right, when they're talking about these laid-off workers, when they're talking and beating the drum against Republicans shutting the government down over the last decade, it's hard to imagine that they actually will vote to shut the government down. But what we just heard from House Democratic leaders indicates that they will not give a single vote to Republicans. We'll see if that sticks. But if that bill makes it out of the House tomorrow, Democrats in the Senate are going to have a lot of thinking to do before Friday.
Julie Sirkin, live for us on the Hill. Thank you very much. The newest twist now in the Menendez brothers' case means it could be up to a judge to decide whether the two men may walk free soon in what is now a narrower path to freedom for these two, with new reaction late tonight to the L.A. District Attorney's decision to withdraw a motion to resentence Eric and Lyle Menendez. Here's the attorney for the brothers, insisting that this is not a step backwards.
It doesn't matter what he thinks or what I think. It's what the law says. What the law says and what the DA's office already previously did was that they've shown remarkable rehabilitation.
Now, resentencing is one possible path that the brothers have been pursuing to get out of prison. You see the paths here. They also tried to get a new trial, but that's a no-go at this point. The DA says he's against it. The remaining option, clemency, granted by California Governor Gavin Newsom. That is very much TBD right now, but we are learning tonight that the governor is asking the state's parole board to update its process to clear a path for more prisoners to have their sentences shortened. Put a little asterisk on that. We're coming back to that. Remember, Eric and Lyle Menendez are serving life sentences right now for the murders of their parents back in 1989. The brothers said they did it because their father sexually abused them. Their trials at the time had wall-to-wall coverage. They became the subject of books, of documentaries, of podcasts. And we've seen that interest pick back up again in the last year or so. Camila Bernal is following this story for us. And let's start with the developments today. The district attorney, who late tonight walked through this pretty detailed analysis, if you will, building the case of why he opposes resentencing. So what did he say?
Yeah, he says that the reason, Hallie, that he opposes or essentially is withdrawing that motion to re-sentence the brothers is that he does not believe that the brothers have fully accepted responsibility for their crimes. He believes that they lied when they used self-defense as their defense in court. So what he's saying is that if they don't essentially come out and say that they lied and say that they were not doing this because of self-defense, then he could actually reconsider supporting a resentencing motion. I want you to take a listen to what the DA said.
The district attorney's office, if it is presented with these new insights, unequivocal, sincere acknowledgments of all the lies they have told for the past over 30 years, we too, in the district attorney's office, will reconsider whether or not we would want to go forward with a resentencing motion.
Yeah, so he said the brothers could speak out publicly, could record a video, do it through their attorneys. But he says if they apologize and essentially accept responsibility, then he would reconsider resentencing. And now it's really just in the hands of the judge because he pulled back that motion from the DA. Now, of course, the family, they are not happy about what the DA came out and said today. They released a statement essentially saying that they have blinders, that the DA has blinders and hasn't been looking at the sexual abuse allegations. And the family went on to say that they've actually apologized several times to the family and have accepted their crimes. But again, the DA saying that he needs to see something recent and needs to see them saying that they are responsible and accepting that responsibility for their crimes, not in self-defense. Hallie.
It seems like for these brothers, more and more, the path to any kind of freedom runs through the governor's mansion in California. There is in the hands of Governor Gavin Newsom. So where is Newsom on all of this?
Yeah, that is probably their biggest chance at being free. What happens here is that the governor has asked the parole board to do an assessment and to really look into how the brothers are doing now, whether they've accepted responsibility, whether they've been rehabilitated, gone to school, how they behave. And so that's being done right now. It's obviously unclear what the findings are, but the findings will then be given to the governor, and then the governor will decide whether or not he should essentially commute their sentence. And that really could be their best chance at freedom at this point. But the governor could really do it at any point. That's what the DA pointed out today, that really the governor has the ability to just today say, OK, I will commute their sentence. So we are waiting for those findings and we are waiting for the governor.
Camila Bernal, thank you very much. Live for us there in L.A. Appreciate that. To Florida now, where we are getting confirmation tonight of a tornado touching down just about an hour north of Disney World in Orlando. Look at some of the damage here. This twister hit homes, hit other buildings. Look at the destruction. The most incredible part, we have no reports right now of anybody being seriously hurt. Thank goodness. I want to get to Bill Cairns now. This was unexpected, Bill. And when you see the condition of some of those homes, it is a good thing. Obviously, anytime we know that people are unhurt, but especially when you look at the power of that twister.
And look at that house. I mean, that house, all the walls collapsed. And inside that house was a couple. And they only minutes before the tornado warning, they got the warning, minutes before the tornado actually hit, they went into an interior room, as you're supposed to do. People don't have, they don't have basements or storm shelters in this parts of Florida or anywhere in Florida for that matter. And so they went to an interior room and it saved their life. Even the firefighters were just so impressed that they walked out of that completely unscathed. And this is an area that 20 years ago, I worked 1 mile from where this tornado hit. I know this area very, very well. And it actually moved and went right over the top of the TV station that I used to work at while they were on air, which was pretty amazing. So this is the area that we're talking about. This was the actual tornado. And just to give you an idea on the timeline there. So this was early in the morning. This is the strongest tornado. It was an EF2, 120 mile per hour peak winds when it destroyed that house that we showed you. This was at 9:30 to 10 a.m. in the morning. They were not in a tornado watch. We were not expecting severe weather. And so this was the tornado warning that went out at 9:35 a.m. That house that collapsed was located right where my finger is here. And so they had about 3 to 4 minutes warning. It wasn't a lot, but the National Weather Service did issue that warning. They had enough time to get to a safe room, and then that tornado hit them minutes after that they got the warnings on their phones. And that was it. And then it moved out and didn't really cause significant damage anywhere else, Hallie, but just... And, that was a recipe for disaster. And the fact that it was so early in the morning, no one was thinking they were going to have tornadoes.
There's also, when we talk about the risk for extreme weather, we're looking at what's going on in and around New York, specifically on Long Island. We've seen those fires rip through over the weekend. They are largely contained now. But walk us through the potential for the risk moving forward, not just there, but in the plains as well.
Yeah, it's been a windy start to this month, and we've had numerous fires like this one that popped up over Long Island over the weekend. And, we're just kind of jumping around the country to different spots, watching these hot spots. We were very dry in many areas over the winter, and now that it's warm and it's windy, we're going to see more of these, until we get some good soaking rains, which usually you think of that more April and May, and stuff starts greening up. We're going to have issues like this. I mean, it's 81 degrees right now in Omaha. It's not supposed to be that warm this time of year in Omaha. Rapid City's at 71, so the plains are incredibly warm, and they're very windy. High wind warnings in areas of North Dakota, portions of South Dakota and Wyoming. So all it takes, just one little spark. They said that one on Long Island was caused by people making s'mores in their backyard. So, just a little tiny error and cause huge problems. We do have those high winds. As we go through the rest of today, we have a critical risk in those areas I just showed you in the Dakotas, also Nebraska into Kansas. Tomorrow, those high winds will shift more to the south. We're back in New Mexico and heading through Texas, and this is where that high wind threat's going to remain for a while. Hallie, we do have a big storm coming the middle to end of this week. It starts on the West Coast as we go throughout Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that moves through the middle of the country. It'll arrive on the East Coast on Sunday. We all need the rain. Unfortunately, this storm's also going to have high winds with it, which means the fire danger is going to be high all week.
Bill Cairns, thank you for that update. I know we'll be talking again, I am sure, in the days to come. Appreciate it. Let's take it to New York, where right now you are taking a live look outside Columbia University, where members of the school faculty, where members of the community are condemning the arrest of a recent graduate who'd been detained by federal immigration officials over the weekend. Mahmoud Khalil helped organize some of the school's pro-Palestinian rallies. ICE agents arrested him at his home on Saturday, according to his attorney, saying his student visa was being revoked. But that attorney says Khalil is a legal permanent resident with a green card and that ICE detained him anyway. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson says they are acting on President Trump's executive orders to address anti-Semitism, and they accuse Khalil of leading activities aligned with Hamas, a designated terrorist organization. The president posting about this online today, saying that this is only the first arrest of many to come. Rahima Ellis is joining us now from Columbia's campus, where there is intense fallout tonight. What else do we know about this, Rahima?
Well, what we know right now is, according to the Homeland Security website, that Khalil is being held at a facility in Louisiana. This after, according to his attorney, for about 25 hours after he was arrested here in New York City, and as he was entering his apartment with his American wife, who is 8 months pregnant. For some 25 hours, they did not know where he was. They thought he was in a facility in Elizabeth, New Jersey. She went there to visit, and they were told he was not there. But now they know he is in Louisiana. According to his attorney, it seems that they are not sure of exactly what the charges are against him. We have seen no arrest warrant and seen nothing about the charges. A full screen statement we have from his attorney saying to the effect of what you just mentioned, that he had a student visa which was revoked. And even though they say he was a legal permanent resident with a green card, according to his attorney, and not in the U.S. on a student visa, he was confronted with the fact that I just mentioned. But ICE agents detained him anyway. And overnight, his attorney says they filed a habeas corpus petition on his behalf, challenging the validity of his arrest and detention. Another full screen I want to share with you just from Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, who says, we will be revoking the visas and or green cards of Hamas supporters in America so they can be deported. There is some question about whether or not Khalil is a Hamas supporter. Again, we have seen no papers about the exact charges against him. One thing I should mention to you that has come out also today, that the Department of Education has mentioned that it's investigating 60 universities here in this country, not just Columbia University, but American University in Washington, Boston University, as well as Harvard University, Northwestern, and Brown University, all for whether or not there have been some violations of what they're saying is those who are protesting and supporting Hamas. Hallie?
Rahima Ellis live for us there outside Columbia University. Rahima, thank you. Also tonight, new questions around an alleged cyber attack of X, which used to be Twitter today, with Elon Musk in just the last hour linking that outage to Ukraine. Listen to this.
We're not sure exactly what happened, but there was a massive cyber attack to try to bring down the X system with IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area.
Remember, no cyber attack has been independently confirmed, although experts tell NBC News the outage is consistent with a rudimentary but sometimes effective hacker tactic. The platform experiencing several outages throughout the day, leaving thousands of users not able to get on X. Morgan Chesky is joining us now, and Elon Musk addressing this now late tonight. Morgan, what else do we know?
Yeah, Hallie, this outage began around 5:30 Eastern time this morning, and then it had two separate outages follow, one around 9 a.m., another at 11 a.m. We do know that some of these outages were mitigated to some degree. The culprit or culprits still unknown at this hour, but that has not stopped Elon Musk from sharing his opinion, as we just heard in that recent interview. Prior to that, Hallie, this is what he had to say on X following the third outage that impacted X, saying, there still is a massive cyber attack against X. We get attacked every day, but this was done with a lot of resources. Either a large coordinated group and or a country is involved. Tracing. Now, important to note, Hallie, that following that tweet and that interview, he has not publicly shared outside of that interview any evidence that would lead to the culprits or that party responsible. As he was suggesting, it could be the work of an entire country. But an expert that spoke with NBC News did say that this has the telltale symptoms of that distributed denial of service attack, otherwise known as a DDoS. And that is when you simply flood a website with so much traffic that it is forced to shut down. In this case, somewhat of a pattern here with those three separate outages this morning. Hallie?
We also know, and we played that soundbite there from Elon Musk in that brand new interview late today with Larry Kudlow over on Fox Business. And at one point, Kudlow asked Musk, how are you with everything related to Doge and all of the leadership of these efforts to slash the federal workforce on the part of President Trump? Kudlow said, how are you running your other businesses? And Musk said something like, with difficulty, sort of acknowledging that there is a lot on his plate, because it's not just X. He's also got Tesla, of course. Their stock, we've covered it here on this show, has gone down fairly significantly since January. There was a fire involving a Cybertruck. There's other developments over the weekend about this, and Musk is addressing those as well.
Yeah, Hallie, he is. And amid that Tesla stock plunge, we're learning more about this attack, or rather incident involving those 4 Tesla Cybertrucks. This was in Seattle. The first call went out late last night. Seattle police arrived to find 4 Tesla Cybertrucks that had been damaged, vandalized to a significant degree, set on fire, at least one of them there, kind of erupting in a blaze. We do know that there was no one injured in that act of vandalism there, but this does add to the fact that people are protesting Elon Musk and what he's done since unofficially taking the helm of the Department of Governmental Efficiency, or DOGE. Still unknown who's responsible for that Tesla attack and who's behind this X outage officially this morning. Hallie?
Morgan Chesky live for us there in L.A. Morgan, thank you very much for that. Coming up here on the show, much more to get to, including, in fact, the growing concern around measles, with some people now turning to unproven treatments, why that idea may no longer be on the fringes. Plus, some scary scenes off the coast of England, what the Coast Guard says created multiple explosions. Look at that, and a fuel leak. Also tonight, a desperate search for a 20-year-old college student who went missing while on a spring break trip to the Dominican Republic. And now, potentially some new clues as her parents are traveling to the island to help in the search. Sadiq Konaki was last seen Thursday, very early morning, right around 4 a.m., heading into the beach at the hotel where she was staying with friends. Multiple agencies in the DR now searching by land, air, and sea, with investigators combing the area, talking with her friends. Her friends, by the way, all made it back to the hotel. At this point, they say it's too soon to know whether her disappearance was an accident or if foul play was involved. Adrienne Broaddus is joining us now, and as we mentioned, her family members are on their way to the DR. She is from the area not far from Washington, D.C., here where I'm sitting. What else do we know about this push for the search and this investigation?
You know what, Hallie, at this stage, it's a parallel investigation, meaning multiple agencies are looking into this. first and foremost, they've already spoken with the other female students, 5 of them, who traveled from the University of Pittsburgh to Punta Cana with her. They were supposed to head back to school on Friday, but they're still there, part of the investigation. They all traveled to Punta Cana a week ago today. Search teams are using helicopters, drones, and dogs for clues to help them locate the missing 20-year-old who's on spring break. Surveillance video may be key. It shows, according to police, the 20-year-old entering the beach area with others just before 4 a.m. That was on Thursday, and the last time she was seen on video. Investigators tell us they're focusing on conversations they had with a young man who was at the beach around the same time. Investigators saying in a statement they're working to corroborate his version of events. A short time ago, a close family friend and neighbor spoke with our affiliate, WRC, telling us they want answers to this mystery.
It's already 4 days, and we are so worried. This is so sad news for all of us here. We are really looking for her to return.
He also told us the parents who are now in Punta Cana assisting want authorities there to expand the search from the resort to the city. Now, I also spoke with the Loudoun County Sheriff. He is over the department in the same city where she's from. He told us they filed what is known as a yellow notice or a worldwide police alert. What does that mean? If she travels to another country, Loudoun County will be alerted. So Loudoun County is assisting U.S. officials who are there on the ground. They are acting as a liaison and also working as a support system. And we know in some cases garner more attention than others, but often the State Department becomes involved through their Overseas Citizens Department, which helps families advocate who may need help. Everyone hoping for a positive outcome. She has 2 younger sisters at home who are twins. Back to you, Hallie.
Adrienne Broaddus, thank you very much for that. Also tonight, no end in sight for that deadly measles outbreak in 2 states, as we see more of a movement now around some unorthodox and in some cases unproven remedies for measles. Even with the availability of a safe and effective vaccine that is out there, some people are turning to treatments with no scientific backing, among them cod liver oil, certain antibiotics, vitamin supplements, even a type of steroid. And if you're thinking this is coming maybe from some fringes, it's not just the internet's sort of random corners where you can find support for these ideas. It's also coming from the country's highest official on health and medicine. Take a listen to what the Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saying just in the last week.
Right now, we have, we're delivering vitamin A. We're getting very, very good results. They report from budesonide, which is a steroid. It's a 30-year-old steroid, and clarithromycin, and also cod liver oil.
Remember, cases in Texas are now climbing toward 200, with 1 school-aged child reported killed from the measles. In New Mexico, 30 cases are reported by health officials in 1 county there. A man who died in that state tested positive for measles, but it's still not clear if that was what caused his death. I'm joined now by NBC's Erica Edwards, who has been, of course, Erica, the tip of the spear in our reporting on this. I know you spoke with a doctor in Texas who is echoing RFK Jr.'s support for some of these remedies, which we're showing again here. We will show. Is there any science to back up what this doctor's telling you?
Oh, in short, no, but there's some nuance there. So let's really break it down, right? So this doctor I talked with in Gaines County, the epicenter of this outbreak, is effectively treating people there. He said he's treated more than about 180 people with measles there in the past week alone. Those are, and usually they're giving out cod liver oil. Now, cod liver oil is high in vitamin A. Some studies in other countries where malnutrition is an issue have shown that maybe it could help treat measles. But here in the U.S., we've got plenty of vitamin A, and there's no credible evidence that giving kids cod liver oil can be effective. What's more, it can be toxic at larger doses. Now, the steroid that you're seeing there is an inhaled steroid. It can treat that inflammation in those, especially those tiny kids in their airways that they can get from measles. The other one, the antibiotic. Now, we've long known that you don't use antibiotics to treat viruses. That's when you can get antibiotic resistance, Hallie.
We showed the map there that it is not just Texas and New Mexico where cases have popped up. They're across the country that we need to stress here, not related to the Texas, New Mexico outbreaks, right? Like I'm thinking about this confirmed measles case in Maryland that popped up. Officials who said people who simply passed through Dulles, the airport, right around the same time as the person who got sick should be on alert, which says a lot about how contagious this is.
This virus is wild because it can linger around in the air for up to 2 hours after an infected person has walked through. So you're looking at, Terminal A at Dulles, where thousands of people come in and out every single day from around the world. And anyone who's unvaccinated or under-vaccinated is vulnerable to those little viral particles, all afternoon, for example.
Erica Edwards live for us with the latest on those measles news headlines. Erica, thank you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the Vatican says Pope Francis's health is getting better. They have lifted this prognosis of guarded, which means he's no longer considered in imminent danger of dying because of his respiratory infection. It's still not clear how many more days the 88-year-old will spend in the hospital. Number 2, check out this fiery collision this morning off the British coast in the North Sea. An American fuel tanker hit by a container ship. Both of the ships caught fire, and obviously that sent up a huge plume of smoke. You see it there. Tonight, one member of the container ship crew is unaccounted for. Nearly 24 people who were on board the tanker are accounted for. Number 3, researchers are saying some CT scans may cause health issues. The imaging tool, which is used to diagnose things like bone injuries, cancer, diseases, may expose patients to unnecessarily high radiation doses. Those might be responsible for some of the cancer cases, according to this. The public concerns come as Medicare now requires hospitals and imaging centers to track and share data about the amount of radiation they use in these CT scans. Number 4, news into us just minutes ago with a jury finding that Disney did not copy a writer's story to create the hit film Moana. This is according, of course, to the AP. Writer and animator Buck Woodall claimed the movie contained a lot of his ideas. He says he gave his script to a distant relative who works for another company on the Disney lot back in 2004. Moana came out in 2016. The defense team and witnesses said during the trial nobody ever saw Woodall's work. Number 5, what's old may be new again for Amazon, with Prime now streaming the former NBC hit The Apprentice. The now President Donald Trump anchored reality show. Obviously, he was not president at the time, but he led that show back in the early 2000s. The catchphrase, "You're fired," was used so many times during, of course, the then candidates Trump's presidential campaigns. This is not the first partnership between Amazon and the Trump family. Amazon has licensed an upcoming Melania Trump documentary as well. When we come back, why a proposed new bill in Texas could mean charges for transgender people. Plus, if you've ever wondered what 100-mile-an-hour wind feels like, we're going to show you next. A new wave of intense violence in Syria, leaving nearly 1,000 civilians dead and raising concerns over the future of the country. The clashes breaking out now between the new post-Assad regime and those who are loyalists of Bashar al-Assad's. It's the worst violence in the country since insurgents toppled that regime back in December, and the biggest test for Syria's new government since assuming power. Matt Bradley is joining us now.
The news today out of Syria is that after 4 days of very, very bloody violence in the western part of the country, we're hearing that there were clashes just today in the capital city of Damascus. And that would be the first time we've been seeing violence ever since the fall of the former regime of Bashar al-Assad late last year. Now, this all broke off in the Alawite heartland, the western part of the country along the Mediterranean coast late last week. That's when reportedly elements who were loyal to the former regime of Bashar al-Assad attacked government forces. Now, that sparked a major backlash from the government, who sent in troops in order to suppress what they were calling a coup d'etat by members of the former regime. But it looks as though there were also some ragtag elements who followed those troops in, and that both of those groups committed some horrific crimes against mostly civilians who were living there. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is a London-based watchdog group, which is normally very authoritative on matters of Syria, they said that as many as nearly 1,400 people have been killed. Nearly 1,000 of them were civilians. We heard from Syria's new leader, Ahmed al-Shara, saying that operation in the western part of the country has wrapped up. But this doesn't bode well for the future of this country, which has been scarred so deeply by nearly a decade of war. These are the first real outbreaks of violence that we've seen since the fall of the former regime. And even if it looks like this has been wrapped up, even if peace is restored, this doesn't bode well for the future of this country.
Our thanks to Matt Bradley for that reporting. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because it can be tough to read and watch and listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Southern Bureau, a proposed bill in Texas now threatens to charge transgender people with, quote, gender identity fraud. If passed, it would become a felony to identify as a gender opposite than what a person was assigned at birth. Trans rights advocates call this bill alarming. Out of our LA bureau, a well-known treehouse in Sherman Oaks, California, has been torn down. The owner built it for his daughters back in 2000, and it became a popular hang spot in the neighborhood, even getting the name Boney Island. After complaints and the city saying it was extra living space, he decided to take it down and, quote, be done with it. Out of our Northeast Bureau, check this out. Scientists at Mount Washington Observatory showing the true force of 100-mile-an-hour winds. There they are, sliding across the ground, trying to crawl back up against the wind. Again, all in the name of science. Coming up, could the WNBA be headed for a strike? Well, one of the league's biggest stars says maybe. That's next. Some new questions tonight about the future of the WNBA, players' contracts after this year's seasons, and what will happen there, especially with one of the most popular players in the league now threatening the possibility of a strike. There's talks towards a collective bargaining agreement happening now between the Players Association and the league. And Chicago Sky forward Angel Reese says she wants in on those negotiations. Listen.
I gotta get in the meetings because I'm hearing like, yeah, they don't give us, if y'all don't give us what we want, like, we said no.
Question is, of course, do other big-name players want to join in on a possible strike? We've reached out to the league on this. No reply yet. Remember, the WNBA had a massive season last year, record-setting for them, the most-watched regular season in 24 years. Its biggest attendance total in 22 years. Merch sales up 600%. Steve Patterson is following this story for us. So where does this go here, right? This deal with the WNBA and the Players Association, I think, expires at the end of the summer, right? So this fall. What happens after that?
Well, they're going into negotiations to talk about that. And I think it's fair to say at this point that the players just want to be treated and paid like the international celebrities that many of them now are, right? And I think to see that, you have to imagine that the way we see the WNBA is different than how we saw it 5 years ago, 3 years ago, even 2 years ago. And all you have to do is look at this collective bargaining agreement that the players just opted out of, right? It was agreed upon in 2019. So it has things in it like when you fly to an away game, you can fly premium economy. You can stay in your own hotel room. We will pay you your full salary while you're on maternity leave. These are things that are very basic for, I think, any company at this point. But they were seen as a major victory back then. Now things are so much different. Just look at a player like Angel Reese, right? I think at this point, it is fair to say that she is a household name. She will make less than $75,000 on her current salary within the WNBA. So I think they just want to take it and put it more in line with what it is. She's been getting maligned a little bit on social media, I think, for people taking what she said out of context. Many people saying that she thought she needed to get paid as much as NBA players do. She said that is absolutely not true. There was a tweet where she said, quote, "I love how all y'all have selective hearing. I'm hearing that they don't want to give us what they want. We're sitting out." And that's the truth. I never said anything about the NBA. We are prepared to say at the negotiation table. We also reached out to the Players Association. They sent us a statement saying, quote, "Our members are passionate about the future of the league. We are proud to represent a group of united, dialed in, and pushing for transformational deal that's fair. We won't comment on individual statements right now." What they want is really simple, Hallie. They want, of course, a little bit higher pay. They want a softer salary cap, and they want benefits like things specifically dialed into childcare which is very important when you're talking about a league like this. Hallie?
Are these asks in line with the reality of the money that the WNBA has at its disposal right now?
Well, I mean, you led with it, right? The league, again, it's so much different. When you have Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese transforming viewership and sales and people butts in the seats, frankly, the league is taking in much more money, about $200 million last year. Guess how much the players get? Less than 10%. In the NBA, of course, it makes significantly more money, like $10 billion. Those players get about 50% of that pie. That's not to mention, of course, the WNBA much more popular. They just signed a new media rights deal, $2.2 billion. This league has money, Hallie. It's just about how you distribute that money and how much you think the stars are bringing in. I think it's significant. Hallie?
Steve Patterson, thanks for being all over it for us tonight. The intersection of sports and business and culture. We appreciate that. Still to come here on the show, the clock ticking for TikTok. So we're looking at the names in play to buy it. What they're now planning if China decides to, if that Chinese-based owner decides to sell. To tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it's the big names trying to become TikTok's next owner. All of it still very much in limbo ahead of that deadline, now just 3 weeks away for that Chinese-based company ByteDance to sell TikTok or be banned in the United States. That's after Congress passed and President Biden signed a law forcing that to happen. President Trump then extended the deadline right after taking office and says he's working with groups to try to get a deal done. Now, some bidders are trying to make their case, not just to the White House, but to the public. Here's Stephen Romo.
The clock is ticking on TikTok, with President Trump's 75-day pause on banning the app set to end within a month. The president seems optimistic, saying he's working with multiple bidders.
Do you think there's going to be a deal on TikTok soon?
There could be. We're dealing with 4 different groups, and a lot of people want it, and it's up to me.
It's not clear exactly who those 4 groups are, but bidders are clamoring for attention. Employer.com CEO Jesse Tinsley, a former firefighter, is leading one high-profile group to buy the social media app. In a recent op-ed for Fox News, Tinsley highlighted how important TikTok is for Main Street, calling it a lifeline for small businesses, adding how it can build a customer base for real people with real dreams building real businesses.
I think American control, whether that's us or another party, I think that's paramount.
Big names like YouTube personality Mr. Beast joining that group bid.
We have an offer ready for you.
They recently said the offer is, quote, north of $30 billion in cash. Another bidder with a vision, real estate billionaire Frank McCourt, leading what he calls the people's bid.
My view is that when ByteDance understands that they can transact without selling the algorithm, I think their view is going to be totally different.
If he's successful, he says TikTok would not use any Chinese technology, instead being run on his nonprofit's platform, allowing users to have more control over their data. Reddit founder Alexis Ohanian has joined that bid. Another offer led by Wyoming wealth management billionaire Reed Rasner, presenting a plan to have U.S. users buy into the platform as founding members.
This is about the American people, and this is about bringing TikTok to America. And I'm going to fight for that day in and day out.
Rasner says his offer is around $47.5 billion and that the Trump administration has reviewed it. But the big question, will TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance be swayed to sell?
Will China agree to sell it?
I think that's obviously something that's out of our hands. We've obviously put together a very, very strong offer.
Tariff tensions also escalating between the Trump administration and the Chinese government. Frank McCourt telling Reuters just last week ByteDance hasn't retained a banker or even set a valuation. President Trump says he'd be open to the U.S. only owning 50% of TikTok and extending the ban deadline again if needed.
Hopefully China will approve of the deal, but they're going to play a role.
Perhaps acknowledging all the cards China holds as this TikTok tug of war drags on.
Stephen Romo is joining us now. So that April 5th deadline is coming up pretty quickly here, Stephen. What are the president's options to extend if he wants to?
Yeah, if they can't get a deal together in the next 3 weeks or so, Hallie, the president open to extending this, but how he'll do it, that is open to some speculation. The timeline is a bit murky. There's a 90-day extension built into that law if they can show Congress that a deal is in the works and ByteDance is on board. But it's kind of complicated because of the executive order he signed when he came into office that gave that 75-day extension. He could possibly try another executive order. He could also tell the Justice Department just not to enforce this bipartisan law that's been on the books now for almost a year. It's unclear what path he'll go forward, but he certainly seems confident he can do it. By the way, he's tapped J.D. Vance to try to get on board to get this deal done, so we'll see what they can come up with.
Millennial, pushing forward with TikTok. We'll see what happens. Stephen Romo, thank you very much. Appreciate that. That's a wrap for this hour. More coverage picks up right now. We are coming on the air with the word that nobody wants to say, but that everybody fears. The word is not Voldemort, my friends. It is, in fact, recession. And it's those fears driving one of the market's worst day in nearly 3 years. But in just the last half hour, a White House official says, have no fear. It's all part of the quote-unquote animal spirits, their words, of the stock market. We're going to take a look at what that means and what it means for your money in just a second. We're also live in Los Angeles, where the path to freedom for the Menendez brothers appears to be narrowing. Why some family members say the new district attorney there is holding them hostage. Then take a look at some of the video we're getting in out of Florida here. Something like half a dozen tornadoes totally destroying homes. Look at that, not too far from Disney World. Our weather team is tracking the storms tonight. Plus, in just the last 20 minutes, we're learning a judge is blocking the deportation of a pro-Palestinian protester who helped lead demonstrations at Columbia University after the president said his arrest would be the first of many. And good luck if you try to get any NFL free agency news tonight, because X has had problems all day. We'll tell you what Elon Musk is now blaming later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and we are coming on the air with the markets getting rocked, including the NASDAQ having its worst day in more than 2 years. But the White House waving off these worries as President Trump refuses to rule out some short-term potential pain for Americans in the week ahead. Let me start with where we are on the markets. It is red, red, red. The Dow down nearly 900 points. The NASDAQ had its worst day since 2022. But in just the last hour, a new statement from a White House official emphasizing, in their view, a strong divergence, they say, between the animal spirits of the stock market and what we're actually seeing unfold from businesses and business leaders. That is the quote there. Listen, the latter matters more to hear President Trump himself tell it, what business leaders are saying. And as the president has framed it, don't stress about the possibility of recession because he's got a big vision with big potential. Watch.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time.
So President Trump not ruling out a recession there. And if you're wondering why is all this market uncertainty happening today, part of it is that tariff train that is not slowing down this week. Tomorrow, the threat of new tariffs on Canadian lumber and dairy. Wednesday, more tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from everybody, 25%. All of it adding to these questions about the economic picture in this country. Like, how will those retaliatory tariffs promised by the president factor in when they kick in 3 weeks from now? What about new leadership north of the border now that Justin Trudeau is out in Canada? And then there's that government shutdown looming on Friday. We're going to have more from Capitol Hill on that later. Vaughn Hilliard is joining us, but I want to start with Brian Chung, who's following all things markets here. Gut check us, Brian, on the so-called animal spirits of the markets, because while a White House official says the focus is on the business leaders, it is, in fact, some business leaders who just in the last week have sounded the alarm, suggesting they may have to raise prices if these tariffs stick around long term.
Yeah, and maybe that's not the business leaders they were referring to. Maybe they were referring to the business leaders that have committed those hundreds of billions of dollars in investments in the United States over the long term, which, by the way, by some readings were investments that they were going to make regardless of whoever was in the White House anyway. But as you point out, there have been a number of business leaders in the last few weeks as the president has ratcheted up these trade wars that have expressed concern about it. When you think about Best Buy and Target and just hours after the announcement of the 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada last Tuesday, saying, look, we're probably going to have to pass these costs on to consumers. And then even just this afternoon, following what was a very ugly day on Wall Street, as you just laid out, we heard from Delta saying that they're going to have to slash their guidance for the first quarter of this year because of concerns about consumer confidence and then spending. This is the verbatim from Delta CEO Ed Bastian has said in an interview to our friends over at CNBC, quote, consumer confidence is coming down a little bit, as we all know. That's why the market is in a challenge that it is. And as a result of that, we saw companies start to pull back in terms of corporate spending, started to stall. And there's a CEO, a corporate CEO, that's saying this economic activity actually is of concern to them, which kind of defies the statement that we heard from the White House, Hallie.
So let's talk about the practical impact of what's happening here, because as we talk about the price people pay, right, whether it's small businesses, whether it's American farmers, whether it's the American consumer, i.e. like anybody who buys anything from almost anywhere, what's the impact here?
Yeah, well, I mean, interestingly, a lot of the tariffs haven't been put into place because of the exemptions that were put sort of in the 11th hour last week on Mexico and Canada. But things like gas prices, for example, still could go up because that 10% on Canadian energy is still in place. But electricity is the biggest one that we're paying attention to right now because the announcement from Ontario and their premier, Doug Ford, saying that they don't want to have to do this, but as a result of the actions from the Trump administration, they're going to slap this 25% surcharge on electricity that in New York, Minnesota, and also Michigan that they pay for. And I think people might even not know that in some cases, in many states east of the Rockies, they actually do plug into the same electric grid as Ontario. I believe we have sound from Doug Ford describing exactly what's happening here. Take a listen.
If the United States escalates, I will not hesitate to shut the electricity off completely.
So again, teasing that maybe the 25% isn't even the end of their response here. But again, we'll have to see what the president and the White House does in the months to come. As you mentioned, actually, it could just be days from now with some announcements potentially coming.
Brian Chung, thank you for following all of that for us. Appreciate it. Let me go to Vaughn Hilliard now. And Vaughn, we have heard now from some of those closest to the president here, his advisors over the course of the last 24 hours, his Commerce Secretary, his National Economic Council Director, say, listen, people are way ahead of their skis to even be whispering about the R word, a.k.a. the recession right now. Talk us through how the White House sees it here, because all signs portray confidence. And yet you see what's happening in the markets, right? Red, red, red. Understanding that the markets are not typically the economy, we know that in the past it is certainly something that the president has had his eye on.
Right. And I think it's notable that last week, the S&P 500, for one, dropped by 3 percentage points. And yet what you saw over the course of this weekend were comments like that from President Trump directly that would not go as far as to dispute that there could potentially be a recession. And so the extent to which the White House would rather not focus on too far down the line in the economic trend that could lead to such an economic downturn. At the same time, there's been a few words spoken by his Commerce Secretary, Treasury Secretary, his top economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, or the president himself that have explicitly said what the end game to all of this is, what their expectations out of China, for instance, are, or Mexico or Canada. There's a dispute between whether this is a trade war or whether this is a war over border and immigration with Canada and Mexico. And that is where we have heard from foreign leaders who have articulated a lack of understanding of exactly what the Trump administration wants to negotiate with them on in order to avoid this, or how far these tariffs will last. We just actually in the last few moments got a statement from the White House, an administration official who tries to temper the concerns about the stock market and the extent to which it is truly encompassing of the greater overall economic picture. This White House official states, want to emphasize that we're seeing a strong divergence between animal spirits of the stock market and what we're actually seeing unfold from businesses and business leaders. And the latter is obviously more meaningful than the former on what's in store for the economy in the medium to long term. As you and Brian were talking about, these are still early indicators, concerning nonetheless.
Vaughn Hilliard, live for us there outside the White House. Vaughn, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Out west now, the newest twist in the case of the Menendez brothers means it could now be up to a judge to decide whether the two men may walk free soon. All of it a narrower but not impossible path for them, with the L.A. District Attorney telling our Liz Kreutz, even though he's withdrawing a motion to resentence Eric and Lyle Menendez, the courts could go forward with it anyway. Here's what the DA says the brothers will have to do if that's the case.
The Menendezes are going to have to show that they've exhibited full insight and completely accepted responsibility for the entire breadth of their criminal actions and all the lies that they had people tell on their behalf or tried to have people tell on their behalf.
Resentencing, of course, is just one of the potential paths the brothers have been pursuing to try to get out of prison. They also attempted to get a new trial. That is a no-go at this point. The DA says he's against it. That leaves clemency, right? That would be granted by the California governor, Gavin Newsom. That is very much at this point TBD. But tonight we are learning that Newsom is asking the state's parole board to update its process to clear a path for more prisoners to have their sentences shortened. Eric and Lyle Menendez are serving life sentences right now, of course, for the murder of their parents back in 1989. The brothers say they did it because their father sexually abused them. Their trials got wall-to-wall coverage, becoming the subject of books, documentaries, more for decades to come. Camila Bernal is following this story for us. And Camila, the brothers' resentences hearings are later this month. It's going to be up to a judge now whether or not that happens. Explain why the DA thinks it should not.
So he didn't necessarily say that it shouldn't happen, but what he did here is he cleaned his hands and said, it's up to the judge. And so what happens here is that he's not going to support the previous DA's motion for resentencing. And he says that he's not supporting that previous motion because he says that the brothers have not taken full responsibility for their actions. He says that the brothers should admit to lying about self-defense. That was what they used during their trial. They said that they killed their parents because they were afraid of them possibly being killed. And the DA says that that is not true in his opinion. But the DA also saying that he could change his mind if the brothers come out and publicly say, yes, we lied. Take a listen to what the DA said.
District Attorney's Office, if it is presented with these new insights, unequivocal, sincere acknowledgments of all the lies they have told for the past over 30 years, we too, in the District Attorney's Office, will reconsider whether or not we would want to go forward with a resentencing motion.
So that hearing for March 20th and 21st, at the moment, that's still on. We'll have to wait for the judge to see if he wants to continue with that hearing or what happens next in terms of the resentencing, Hallie.
The Menendez brothers' attorney says this announcement late today is not a step backwards. I want to play some of that.
It doesn't matter what he thinks or what I think. It's what the law says. What the law says and what the DA's office already previously did was that they've shown remarkable rehabilitation.
Some of the family members are deeply frustrated with this moment, right?
Yeah, they're not happy. And what they're saying is that the district attorney essentially is not looking, has blinders when it comes to the sexual abuse allegations. The family also saying that the brothers have apologized multiple times to those family members and said that they've been sorry for their crimes. So they released that statement essentially criticizing the district attorney and what he did today. But we also have their cousin. She's been sort of the spokesperson for them this whole time. She put out a video on social media also defending the brothers. Take a listen.
This idea that Eric and Lyle have not taken full responsibility or accountability for their actions is absurd. Is absurd. They have. Over and over for decades.
Yeah, and so what the family is saying is that they're hopeful. They're hopeful that the judge will be on their side and hopeful that the governor will be on their side because that really seems to be the best possible option for them in terms of freedom if the governor does end up commuting their sentence, Hallie.
Camila, can you quickly, before I let you go, just pull on that thread a bit? Because you make the point, and I think it's an important one, that right now it seems like the likeliest option, if the Menendez brothers would like to walk free at some point, the likeliest option comes from Governor Newsom and this potential commutation. Where is Newsom's head on this, and what does the development today mean for that?
So he basically sent the parole board to do an assessment. So their assessment includes taking a look at what the brothers are doing now, if they've essentially been remorseful, if they're good people, if released, they wouldn't be a risk to the community. So that is an assessment that's being done now and could take up to 90 days. Then the recommendation from that assessment is going to be given to the governor, and that's when he said he will decide what to do. But the DA pointed out today that the governor can do this at any point. He can come out today and say, I will commute their sentence. So we're waiting in terms of the timeline of the governor and, of course, of that parole board.
Camila Bernal live for us there in L.A. Camila, thank you very much. Got to go back east now for some breaking news just into us with a judge blocking the deportation of a recent Columbia graduate who was detained by federal immigration officials over the weekend. Mahmoud Khalil now apparently has a hearing set for Wednesday. Remember, Khalil helped organize some of the school's pro-Palestinian rallies. His attorney says ICE agents arrested him at his home on Saturday, saying his student visa was being revoked. But that attorney also says Khalil is a legal permanent resident, that he has a green card, and that ICE detained him anyway. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson says they're acting on President Trump's executive orders to address anti-Semitism, and that Khalil, they say, led activities aligned with Hamas, a designated terror organization. The president posting on Truth Social today, this is only the first arrest of many to come, leading some to wonder what exactly is next. Rahima Ellis is joining us now from Columbia's campus here. So hearing on Wednesday, this is a new development. What are the expectations out of this?
First of all, Hallie, the expectation is we will learn exactly what these charges are against Khalil. To this point, we can't tell you any specific charges other than that ICE and Homeland Security saying that he supported anti-Semitic and Hamas activities, and therefore they revoked his green card. But what exactly does that mean? No one can tell. And what I can tell you is that it has put a chill on this campus. We tried to talk to several students. Some of them told us that they were here on student visas. They were afraid that if they spoke to us, it could jeopardize their status here in this country. We did, however, speak to an American student who told us this. Take a listen.
It's definitely have a measurable impact, I think, on like the kind of state that the community's in emotionally. People feel kind of tense or unsafe in a campus that's supposed to be a welcoming community.
And I should tell you, Hallie, we spoke with a student who said that the student union has sent out an email to all students telling them what to do in the event that ICE confronted them. Hallie?
Just on Friday, we know that the Trump administration essentially canceled $400 million in federal grants to Columbia because of this EO on anti-Semitism, saying it failed to confront anti-Semitism on campus. And by the way, this is the kind of thing that then candidate Trump said he would do going back months ago. I want to play a little bit of that.
My first week back in the Oval Office, my administration will inform every college president that if you do not end anti-Semitic propaganda, they will lose their accreditation and federal taxpayer support.
So how's Columbia reacting to all of this? What impact could it have on other universities?
There is concern about what impact it could have on other universities. Here at Columbia, there was a meeting, I should say, a press conference with Columbia as well as Barnard faculty and Jewish leaders, and one of the things that they said was Jews say no to deportation. They were condemning what they said is a lack of moral leadership here on the campus and in the country. They said that deporting anyone for freedom for speaking their mind is just the opposite of what this community campus is supposed to be all about. They say that they are looking for people to stand up against what they call Trump's authoritarian agenda. There is also, we should tell you, that from the Department of Education, a list of some 60 universities, including Columbia, went out today to say that they are now also being carefully scrutinized by the Department of Education, Homeland Security, etc., to see if perhaps there are some students on their campus whom should be targeted and whether or not the funding that they get from the federal government might also be revoked. Hallie?
Rahima Ellis live for us there near the campus of Columbia. Rahima, thank you very much. Also tonight, we are getting confirmation of a tornado touching down in Florida, one of several. This one about an hour north of Disney World in Orlando. And you can see some of the damage here. Obviously, you see that tight shot there of some debris on a roof. When it pulls out, you're going to see trees uprooted. In other areas, you've seen homes basically leveled, at least one of them. Incredibly, fortunately, we understand that nobody has been seriously hurt. I want to get to Bill Cairns here. Bill, what happened? It seems like it came up with very little warning.
Yeah, Florida's no secret to tornadoes, but strong tornadoes, they don't get a lot of them. This was an EF2, 120 mile per hour. So that's a solid tornado. And it hit at 9:30 in the morning. There was no tornado watch. We knew there was a chance of some thunderstorms, but the environment was just right that this was a brief. It only was on the ground for a short period of time, only traveled 4 miles. But, that one house especially completely collapsed. That's when it hit its peak of 120 mile per hour winds. And there was a couple that was inside that home, went to an interior room, and when you look at the house, you're like, how did they survive? A lot of the other damage in the area besides that house that was completely destroyed looks like this. So this is how it went, and this is Heathrow. And by the way, 20 years ago, before I worked at NBC, came to NBC, I worked at the Fox affiliate here as a meteorologist, located about a mile, and the storm went right over the top of there. And they were on the air live, telling everyone to get in the studio, go under the anchor desk to save themselves, because they didn't know how strong that tornado was. So I still got friends that worked there, and they just tell me what a morning it was watching this go through, Hallie. But thankfully, no injuries, no fatalities, and that was the only tornado they had all morning long. But it was over a very populated area, so everyone was very fortunate.
Bill, for sure. Thank goodness everybody was okay. I want to also talk about what we've seen, sort of big picture here, as tonight we're learning President Trump is set to sign an executive order aimed at giving state and local governments a bigger role in disaster preparedness. Over the weekend, that came as we saw FEMA reportedly cancel some classes for the Federal Fire Training Academy. Obviously, we've seen those wildfires from the West Coast to the East Coast and in the middle of the country as well. How are climate experts looking at all this?
Well, let's start with the fire part first, because this is, pretty much bipartisan. This is fire training for local and state all over the country, and they all go to the National Fire Academy. It's been in place for 50 years, and these are some of the classes that were just canceled, like hazardous materials and weapons of mass disaster incident command, fire investigations, fire inspection principles, emergency medical incident command. Those are just some of the classes that were just canceled. Everyone hopes that this was just a mistake and that it will be reinstated. This has trained, hundreds of people across our country, EMS workers and first responders. The other part of this, the executive order, this is not a surprise. The current administration was very critical, especially of the Biden administration's response to Hurricane Hallie in North Carolina. A lot of Republicans specifically thought that FEMA was not giving the Republicans that were hurt the most by Hallie the necessary resources, and that pointed out to them the failures of FEMA. So, Hallie, this is no surprise whatsoever that this could be the beginning of the Trump administration going in a completely different direction away from FEMA, as it was a campaign promise, just like a lot of these other things. So this shouldn't shock anyone. Now, how exactly it's going to work, and once we get into hurricane season or tornado season and we have big disasters, who's going to do what is going to be a big question. Hopefully it won't be messy, because people, when they are in these situations, they need help immediately. Maybe FEMA wasn't perfect, but they do need help.
Bill Cairns, thank you very much for walking us through all of it tonight. Appreciate it.
Okay.
New questions now around this alleged cyber attack of social media platform X. X, it was known as Twitter, with Elon Musk today linking the outage to the Ukraine area. Listen.
We're not sure exactly what happened, but there was a massive cyber attack to try to bring down the X system with IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area.
Remember, no cyber attack has been independently confirmed, although experts tell NBC News the outage is consistent with a rudimentary but sometimes effective hacker tactic. X had several outages throughout the day, leaving thousands of users not able to get online on X. I want to bring in Morgan Chesky, who's joining us now. And Morgan, Musk is saying that this cyber attack may have originated with some connections to Ukraine, right? But I want to be clear, we do not have independent confirmation of that. We know there is a lot of backstory, of course, around sort of this administration that Musk is working with, their position on Ukraine and Russia's invasion of it. So what do we know about this cyber attack specifically and its impacts on X?
Yeah, Hallie, and I think the most important phrase that we heard Elon say is that first one where he said, we're still not sure exactly what happened. This is still very much under investigation. What we know for certain is that this was essentially a wave of an apparent attack against the platform X that originated around 5:30 this morning Eastern time. And that is when outages began to be reported. There was a second wave that struck around 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, where upwards of 40,000 separate outages were reported. And then there was a third and apparent final wave that struck around 11 a.m. this morning. It was following that third one, Hallie, that Musk took to X, where he shared this post, kind of acknowledging what had been taking place over the last several hours, saying there still is a massive cyber attack against X. We get attacked every day, but this was done with a lot of resources. Either a large coordinated group and or a country is involved tracing. If they are tracing, that is still ongoing. We have yet to see any crystal clear evidence as to who the culprits may be. But, Hallie, to your point, NBC News has spoken with cyber experts who say kind of the pattern of there being multiple attacks in a relative short window does suggest that this could be a distributed denial of service or a DDoS attack, where you essentially flood a website with so much traffic that it shuts itself down here. Hallie?
One of the other pieces of news out of that late interview today with Musk over on Fox Business was this acknowledgement from Musk that he is having some degree of difficulty running his other businesses as he is doing kind of all this work with Doge, with the president, et cetera. And you look at Tesla, of course, one of the other companies he runs, its stock is down 15% today alone, its steepest drop in something like 5 years. What else do we know about Musk's management of some of these other areas where he does have business interest?
Yeah, Hallie, and the stock, a Tesla stock, any gain that it had post-election of Donald Trump has now dropped with that 50% dip we're seeing today. As far as some of the other resistance he's seeing, just yesterday, in fact, in Seattle, police responded to 4 cyber trucks that were set on fire in a Tesla lot. Video pretty stunning here. Fortunately, no one was reported injured. The culprits in this instance still under investigation, but that has not stopped Elon from sharing potential conspiracies as to who may be behind this act of vandalism there. This just kind of the latest example of some entity clearly pushing back against Elon's visibility, particularly most recently with his involvement in the Doge cutbacks that have impacted almost every federal agency we've seen kind of across the board here, Hallie.
Morgan Chesky, thank you very much for that reporting. We've got a lot more to get to here on the show, including the rush to get thousands of people away from the so-called volcano of fire. But first, where's Sadiq, the all-out search to find a college student gone missing on spring break? Coming up, the controversial and unproven treatments being used to try to fight the measles. But first, to Capitol Hill. Stop me if you've heard this one before. The countdown is on. The clock, it's ticking. And the cliches are deja vuing. Because, yes, we are once again watching to see if the government can keep itself up and running with a shutdown showdown. This one coming with a bit of a twist. It's kind of a show of Republican unity. That's really the big headline here. And it may all come to a head as soon as tomorrow. That's when both the president and the Speaker of the House want a vote on a bill that would keep the lights on until the end of September. So, yes, it is some can kicking, but it kicks the can to a September deadline. If they can't get it together tomorrow, they've got a few days buffer until Friday at midnight. You see it there, March 14th. That is when we would see a shutdown furloughing millions of federal workers. Republicans have a super close majority. So if all Democrats band together against the bill, the GOP can only afford to lose one vote. And already one House Republican, you see him there, is already saying he's a hard no. NBC's Julie Sirkin is following this one for us. And Julie, working the phones, as I know you always are, you have some new reporting here about what the president is doing behind the scenes to try to get this over the finish line. What's going on?
Well, he, like us, is also working the phones because he's been placing calls to undecided Republicans all through the weekend after House Speaker Mike Johnson dropped the text of that 99-page continuing resolution that is clean, but not quite, because it certainly plusses up defense spending and then takes some billions away for non-defense discretionary spending, which Democrats are pretty up in arms about. And Trump is trying to get these undecided Republicans, I spoke to a couple of them today, to support this bill because, as you laid out so well, Speaker Johnson really needs every single vote he can get, especially after House Democratic leadership said this. Watch.
The House Republican so-called spending bill does nothing to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. House Democrats will not be complicit in the Republican effort to hurt the American people.
All right, so Jeffrey's saying there that House Democrats at least aren't going to help House Speaker Johnson out with the vote. So he's trying to do this just with Republican votes, which is why Trump is trying to put pressure on these Republicans. It's not the first time we've heard Trump doing this. He did it last week when House Republicans passed their budget resolution, working the phones there too. And what one source told me, he's using his political capital to do that. It's like phone a friend time, like you see, of course, on one of those TV shows, in the game TV shows. And certainly Trump doing this time around. The big question I have is what Senate Democrats do if and when House Republicans manage to push this bill out of the lower chamber. Already some of them, especially moderate Democrats, kind of leaving the door open. They don't like this continuing resolution, but they're not saying no like House Democrats are. So I think if the House manages to pass this bill, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the upper chamber, especially as we get closer to that deadline on Friday, Hallie.
Julie Sirkin live for us there on Capitol Hill. Julie, thank you. To the Dominican Republic now, and the desperate search tonight for a 20-year-old college student who went missing while on a spring break trip to the DR. Her parents now on the island to help in the search. Sadiqsha Kanaki was last seen on Thursday, early morning, right around 4 a.m. She was walking on the beach at the hotel where she was staying with friends. You now have multiple agencies in the DR searching in any way they can, by land, by air, by sea. They're combing through the area. They're talking to her friends who all made it back to the hotel. At this point, they say it's too soon to know whether her disappearance was an accident or if foul play was involved. Adrienne Broaddus is joining us now. Adrienne, are these investigators finding any clues?
You know, they're scrambling to find anything that will help uncover this mystery. Now, she is a permanent resident of Virginia, and we spoke with the Loudoun County Sheriff that's in the town where she's from, but she's also an Indian citizen, and he tells me they are assisting in this search. As you laid out there, Hallie, multiple agencies are searching and working on this investigation. We do know investigators in Punta Cana have interviewed friends she traveled with. We know she traveled to Punta Cana a week ago today with 5 female friends from the University of Pittsburgh. They're still in the town. They were supposed to return on Friday, but now they're part of the investigation. Police also say surveillance video may be a major clue. It shows the 20-year-old entering the beach area with others just before 4 a.m. Thursday, and that was the last time she was seen on video. Now, here's the key. Investigators are focusing on conversations they had with the young man who was at the beach around that same time. Investigators saying in part in a statement they're working to corroborate his version of events. Here's more of what the sheriff told us.
We contacted Interpol, and we have a yellow notice that should be out now, that if she travels to another country or whatever, we'll be alerted on that. So we are going on the presumption that she's still alive. We want to make sure that that we're exhausting every possible lead that we can, and we feel we're doing that.
I do want to add, local media is reporting that some of her clothing was found on the beach with no visible signs of violence at the scene. NBC News has not independently confirmed that yet, but we do have teams on the ground in Punta Cana who are working to get that information. Meanwhile, her family tonight waiting for answers, Hallie, and just hoping for a positive outcome. She has 2 younger siblings that are twins. Back to you.
Adrienne Broaddus, so many people hoping for good news if they can out of the DR tonight. Adrienne, thank you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the Vatican says the Pope's health is getting better. Doctors have lifted the guarded prognosis, which means he's no longer considered an imminent danger because of that respiratory infection he's been fighting. Remember, the Pope is 88 years old, and it's not clear how many more days he's going to be spending in the hospital. Number 2, take a look at this fiery collision this morning off the British coast in the North Sea. An American fuel tanker hit by a container ship. Both ships caught fire. Look at that. See the huge plume of smoke it sent up into the sky. Tonight, 1 member of the container ship crew is unaccounted for. Nearly 24 people who were on board the tank are accounted for. Number 3, the city of Washington, D.C., beginning work today to remove the Black Lives Matter Plaza. It's a mural that covers about 2 city blocks and was painted nearly 5 years ago. The mayor hinting she made the decision to remove it after some pressure from the White House. The process will take up to 8 weeks, and it will cost more than $600,000. Number 4, hundreds of people are being forced to evacuate in Guatemala after the country's so-called volcano of fire started erupting overnight. Officials say another 30,000 people in the area could be at risk. Schools and one key road have closed. The 12,000-foot volcano is one of the most active in Central America. Number 5, some news just into us now. The Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles have accepted an invitation to go to the White House, according to a team spokesperson. So accepting the invite, that is a tradition that typically happens with the Super Bowl winners and the current president. If you recall, the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles cruised to victory over the Kansas City Chiefs in a Super Bowl game performance widely viewed as dominant, even historic by many. Tonight, we'll take you to Texas, we'll take you to New Mexico, where that measles outbreak is happening in 2 states, and now a growing movement around some unorthodox and unproven remedies. Even with the availability of a safe and effective vaccine, some people are turning to treatments without any scientific backing, like cod liver oil, certain antibiotics, vitamin supplements, even a type of steroid. And if you're thinking this may be coming from the fringes, that is not actually the case. It is also coming from the country's most powerful authority on health and medicine, like the head of Health and Human Services. Here's what Secretary Robert F. Kennedy said in just the last week.
Right now, we have, we're delivering vitamin A. We're getting very, very good results. They report from budesonide, which is a steroid. It's a 30-year-old steroid, and clarithromycin, and also cod liver oil.
Remember, cases of measles in Texas are climbing toward 200, with one school-aged child dying from measles. In New Mexico, 30 cases have been reported by health officials in one county there. A man who died tested positive for measles, but it's still not clear if that's what's caused his death. I'm joined now by NBC's Erica Edwards. I know you spoke with a doctor in Texas who is echoing RFK Jr.'s support for some of these remedies, which we're showing again here. We will show. Is there any science to back up what this doctor's telling you?
Oh, in short, no, but there's some nuance there. So let's really break it down, right? So this doctor I talked with in Gaines County, really the epicenter of this outbreak, is effectively treating people there. He said he's treated more than about 180 people with measles there in the past week alone. Those are, and usually they're giving out cod liver oil. Now, cod liver oil is high in vitamin A. Some studies in other countries where malnutrition is an issue have shown that maybe it could help treat measles. But here in the U.S., we've got plenty of vitamin A, and there's no credible evidence that giving kids cod liver oil can be effective. What's more, it can be toxic at larger doses. Now, the steroid that you're seeing there is an inhaled steroid. It can treat that inflammation in those, especially those tiny kids in their airways that they can get from measles. The other one, the antibiotic. Now, we've long known that you don't use antibiotics to treat viruses. That's when you can get antibiotic resistance, Hallie.
We showed the map there that it is not just Texas and New Mexico where cases have popped up. They're across the country that we need to stress here, not related to the Texas, New Mexico outbreaks, right? Like I'm thinking about this confirmed measles case in Maryland that popped up. Officials who said people who simply passed through Dulles, the airport, right around the same time as the person who got sick should be on alert, which says a lot about how contagious this is.
This virus is wild because it can linger around in the air for up to 2 hours after an infected person has walked through. So you're looking at, Terminal A at Dulles, where thousands of people come in and out every single day from around the world. And anyone who's unvaccinated or under-vaccinated is vulnerable to those little viral particles, all afternoon, for example.
Erica Edwards live for us with the latest on those measles news headlines. Erica, thank you. Still ahead for us, flooding hitting parts of Australia. A look at the big rescue efforts happening now. Plus, why planes have been grounded across Germany. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's a look at what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of the UK, activists painting the words "Gaza is not for sale" on the lawn of one of President Trump's golf resorts in Scotland. The group responsible, called Palestine Action, says it's in response to the president's proposal to empty the Gaza Strip of its Palestinian population. He has suggested, of course, turning it into a kind of Riviera. The course called the activism a childish criminal act. Out of Australia, officials in Queensland are using boats now to rescue people trapped by flooding from Cyclone Alfred. It brought damaging winds and heavy rain to the region. Officials say there have been more than 150 water incidents and evacuations in just 24 hours. Hundreds of thousands of people are still without power there. And out of Germany, a 24-hour strike leading to thousands of flight cancellations at dozens of airports across the country. Airport workers want more money and more time off. Negotiations are set to continue later on this month. And in the Middle East, a new wave of intense violence in Syria, reportedly leaving nearly 1,000 civilians dead and raising concerns over the future of the country. The clashes breaking out between the new post-Assad regime and loyalists of Bashar al-Assad, in the worst violence in the country since insurgents toppled the regime back in December. It is also the biggest test now for Syria's new government since they took power. Matt Bradley has more.
The news today out of Syria is that after 4 days of very, very bloody violence in the western part of the country, we're hearing that there were clashes just today in the capital city of Damascus. And that would be the first time we've been seeing violence ever since the fall of the former regime of Bashar al-Assad late last year. Now, this all broke off in the Alawite heartland, the western part of the country along the Mediterranean coast late last week. That's when reportedly elements who were loyal to the former regime of Bashar al-Assad attacked government forces. Now, that sparked a major backlash from the government, who sent in troops in order to suppress what they were calling a coup d'etat by members of the former regime. But it looks as though there were also some ragtag elements who followed those troops in, and that both of those groups committed some horrific crimes against mostly civilians who were living there. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is a London-based watchdog group, which is normally very authoritative on matters of Syria, they said that as many as nearly 1,400 people have been killed. Nearly 1,000 of them were civilians. Now, we heard from Syria's new leader, Ahmed al-Shara, saying that that operation in the western part of the country has wrapped up. But this doesn't bode well for the future of this country, which has been scarred so deeply by nearly a decade of war. These are the first real outbreaks of violence that we've seen since the fall of the former regime. And even if it looks like this has been wrapped up, even if peace is restored, this doesn't bode well for the future of this country.
Coming up, could the WNBA be headed for a strike? Well, one of the league's biggest stars says maybe. That's next. Some new questions tonight about the future of the WNBA, players' contracts after this year's seasons, and what will happen there, especially with one of the most popular players in the league now threatening the possibility of a strike. There's talks towards a collective bargaining agreement happening now between the Players Association and the league. And Chicago Sky forward Angel Reese says she wants in on those negotiations. Listen.
I gotta get in the meetings because I'm hearing like, yeah, they don't give us, if y'all don't give us what we want, like, we sit out.
Question is, of course, do other big-name players want to join in on a possible strike? We've reached out to the league on this. No reply yet. Remember, the WNBA had a massive season last year, record-setting for them, the most-watched regular season in 24 years. Its biggest attendance total in 22 years. Merch sales up 600%. Steve Patterson is following this story for us. So where does this go here, right? This deal with the WNBA and the Players Association, I think, expires at the end of the summer, right? So this fall. What happens after that?
Well, they're going into negotiations to talk about that. And I think it's fair to say at this point that the players just want to be treated and paid like the international celebrities that many of them now are, right? And I think to see that, you have to imagine that the way we see the WNBA is different than how we saw it 5 years ago, 3 years ago, even 2 years ago. And all you have to do is look at this collective bargaining agreement that the players just opted out of, right? It was agreed upon in 2019. So it has things in it like when you fly to an away game, you can fly premium economy. You can stay in your own hotel room. We will pay you your full salary while you were on maternity leave. These are things that are very basic for, I think, any company at this point. But they were seen as a major victory back then. Now things are so much different. Just look at a player like Angel Reese, right? I think at this point, it is fair to say that she is a household name. She will make less than $75,000 on her current salary within the WNBA. So I think they just want to take it and put it more in line with what it is. She's been getting maligned a little bit on social media, I think, for people taking what she said out of context. Many people saying that she thought she needed to get paid as much as NBA players do. She said that is absolutely not true. There was a tweet where she said, quote, "I love how all y'all have selective hearing. I'm hearing that they don't want to give us what they want. We're sitting out." And that's the truth. I never said anything about the NBA. We are prepared to say at the negotiation table. We also reached out to the Players Association. They sent us a statement saying, quote, "Our members are passionate about the future of the league. We are proud to represent a group of united, dialed in, and pushing for a transformational deal that's fair. We won't comment on individual statements right now." What they want is really simple, Hallie. They want, of course, a little bit higher pay. They want a softer salary cap, and they want benefits like things specifically dialed into childcare, which is very important when you're talking about a league like this. Hallie?
Are these asks in line with the reality of the money that the WNBA has at its disposal right now?
Well, I mean, you led with it, right? The league, again, it's so much different. When you have Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese transforming viewership and sales and people butts in the seats, frankly, the league is taking in much more money, about $200 million last year. Guess how much the players get? Less than 10%. In the NBA, of course, it makes significantly more money, like $10 billion. Those players get about 50% of that pie. That's not to mention, of course, the WNBA, much more popular. They just signed a new media rights deal, $2.2 billion. This league has money, Hallie. It's just about how you distribute that money and how much you think the stars are bringing in. I think it's significant. Hallie?
Steve Patterson, thanks for being all over it for us tonight. The intersection of sports and business and culture. We appreciate that. Still to come here on the show, the clock ticking for TikTok. So we're looking at the names in play to buy it. What they're now planning if China decides to, if that Chinese-based owner decides to sell. So tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it's the big names trying to become TikTok's next owner. All of it still very much in limbo ahead of that deadline, now just 3 weeks away for that Chinese-based company ByteDance to sell TikTok or be banned in the United States. That's after Congress passed and President Biden signed a law forcing that to happen. President Trump then extended the deadline right after taking office and says he's working with groups to try to get a deal done. Now, some bidders are trying to make their case, not just to the White House, but to the public. Here's Stephen Romo.
The clock is ticking on TikTok, with President Trump's 75-day pause on banning the app set to end within a month. The president seems optimistic, saying he's working with multiple bidders.
Do you think there's going to be a deal on TikTok soon?
There could be. We're dealing with 4 different groups, and a lot of people want it, and it's up to me.
It's not clear exactly who those 4 groups are, but bidders are clamoring for attention. Employer.com CEO Jesse Tinsley, a former firefighter, is leading one high-profile group to buy the social media app. In a recent op-ed for Fox News, Tinsley highlighted how important TikTok is for Main Street, calling it a lifeline for small businesses, adding how it can build a customer base for real people with real dreams building real businesses.
I think American control, whether that's us or another party, I think that's paramount.
Big names like YouTube personality Mr. Beast joining that group bid.
We have an offer ready for you.
They recently said the offer is, quote, north of $30 billion in cash. Another bidder with a vision, real estate billionaire Frank McCourt, leading what he calls the people's bid.
My view is that when ByteDance understands that they can transact without selling the algorithm, I think their view is going to be totally different.
If he's successful, he says TikTok would not use any Chinese technology, instead being run on his nonprofit's platform, allowing users to have more control over their data. Reddit founder Alexis Ohanian has joined that bid. Another offer led by Wyoming wealth management billionaire Reed Rasner, presenting a plan to have U.S. users buy into the platform as founding members.
This is about the American people, and this is about bringing TikTok to America.
and I'm going to fight for that day in and day out.
Rasner says his offer is around $47.5 billion and that the Trump administration has reviewed it. But the big question, will TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance be swayed to sell?
Will China agree to sell it?
I think that's obviously something that's out of our hands. We've obviously put together a very, very strong offer.
Tariff tensions also escalating between the Trump administration and the Chinese government. Frank McCourt telling Reuters just last week ByteDance hasn't retained a banker or even set a valuation. President Trump says he'd be open to the U.S. only owning 50% of TikTok and extending the ban deadline again if needed.
Hopefully China will approve of the deal, but they're going to play a role.
Perhaps acknowledging all the cards China holds as this TikTok tug of war drags on.
Stephen Romo is joining us now. So that April 5th deadline is coming up pretty quickly here, Stephen. What are the president's options to extend if he wants to?
Yeah, if they can't get a deal together in the next 3 weeks or so, Hallie, the president open to extending this, but how he'll do it, that is open to some speculation. The timeline is a bit murky. There's a 90-day extension built into that law if they can show Congress that a deal is in the works and ByteDance is on board. But it's kind of complicated because of the executive order he signed when he came into office that gave that 75-day extension. He could possibly try another executive order. He could also tell the Justice Department just not to enforce this bipartisan law that's been on the books now for almost a year. It's unclear what path he'll go forward, but he certainly seems confident he can do it. By the way, he's tapped J.D. Vance to try to get on board to get this deal done, so we'll see what they can come up with.
Millennial, pushing forward with TikTok. We'll see what happens. Stephen Romo, thank you very much. Appreciate that. That's a wrap for this hour. More coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.